Hello everybody, Shinjo here, and welcome back to Anime Crossover Episode 5, and it's Ladies' Night. Everybody in this video are girls and women in anime, so without wasting any more time, what I do in this series is take an anime character, typically one that's not from Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon, and discuss what I think their ace Pokemon would be if they were in the Pokemon world, or their deck would be if they were in the Yu-Gi-Oh! World. So let's get started with everybody's favorite useless goddess, Aqua from Konosuba. So Aqua is certainly an interesting case, and full transparency, my initial plan for her Pokemon ace was Slowbro, just because everybody makes a joke about how Aqua is dumb and just useless, but instead, here's what I went with. I went with a shark deck from Yu-Gi-Oh! Mainly because of the one scene in the anime where she is in the cage and being attacked by what looked like sharks. I wanted to play into that, and also there's very few water decks that I haven't used at this point. And Tapu Fini, come on. It is literally a guardian deity of water. How could I not give it to Aqua? So up next on this list is Clara Valak from Welcome to Demon School Iruma. She's definitely a wild character, a fun character at that, and I had a couple of ideas in mind going into this on what I wanted her ace Pokemon to be and what her deck would be, but here's what I went with. The Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck Doodle Book's kind of relevant because the cards just got printed recently. I don't think there's enough to make a deck, but it was between this or the fairy tale cards that Leon used in the later seasons of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I thought this worked better because it's literally imagination, that's all Clara's personality. And I went with a shiny Zweilous for her ace, mainly because the colors match her slippers, which she calls Connor and Murph. So I wanted to kind of play into that reference as well. I just personally like how this all went down. Don't worry, there's going to be some of these that have more explanation the later I get into this video. Up next is Kaguya Shinomiya from Love is War. This is certainly an interesting one because for a lot of these characters specifically, I look on websites, on trivia for them, see if there's anything that I could pull from that, and here is what I went with for her. I wanted to go with sort of a rich sort of aesthetic for her. I initially had Snubbull as her ace because in the Pokemon world, Snubbull is typically a thing that rich people own, so I wanted to play into that. But instead, I went with the Prediction Princess for her Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck. I personally think it fits, especially the princess vibe. And this one's gonna take a little bit of explanation to why I gave her an Ultra Beast. But Celesteela's origins are based off of the Tale of the Bamboo Cutter, which is the same origin story that Kaguya's name is referenced off of. They even touch on it a little bit in the show. Basically, Celesteela and Kaguya have the same origin story, in a way to put it, and that's why I went with that for her. Honestly, there wasn't much more that I could do for her. I know it seems like I give a lot of people legendaries, that's just coincidental. So up next we have Komi Shoko from Komi Can't Communicate. This was an interesting one because she's the only character here that probably has less lines in the show than actual episodes in the show. But here is what I decided to go with for her. I decided to play into the fact that she likes cats and give her a skitty. I feel like that makes a lot of sense. Honestly, in retrospect, on the subject of Gen 3, I probably could have given her a Whismer as well because of the whole non-communicating, which is why I gave her a Silent Magician deck. Because of literally the theme of silent, Komi can't talk, I decided to play into that. I know it's not exactly the same thing, but that's realistically the only thing that I could go off of. I guess in hindsight I could have given her the Doodle Book because she literally uses a notebook, but I think this works too. Next we have Nobara Kugisaki from Jujutsu Kaisen. This one probably isn't going to be a shock, and before I get into this, there are going to be spoilers for Scarlet and Violet. I don't know when I'm posting this, I don't know if that'll be still relevant to say, just a fair warning. here's what I went with. I could not resist giving her Tinkaton. It literally has a hammer. Kugisaki literally uses a hammer. It's a match made in heaven. Plus, I like the whole vibe of Tinkaton on its own just looks kind of cute, but when it swings that hammer around, it's menacing, which I like that sort of parallel between her and Kugisaki. And I decided to go with the doll monster deck focused on playing Princess Cologne because of the whole vibe of her duality between wanting to be pretty and wanting to be strong. I wanted to play into that, and that's realistically the only thing that I felt makes sense. Maybe a Summon Skull deck, but that might be pushing it a little bit. But regardless, up next we have Noelle Silva from Black Clover. I haven't finished Black Clover yet, but she's definitely an interesting character. I like how, even though part of her personality is based off of liking Asta, it's not her entire personality. I do gotta give props for that. But what I decided to go with, I had to give her a Kingdra because one of her attacks is literally a sea dragon, and the only options I have are this and Palkia, and I didn't want to give another character a legendary, so Kingdra it is. And like I mentioned with Aqua, I'm running very low on water decks, so Marincess it is. I think I might have already used Marincess, I can't remember anymore. Next is somebody that's definitely relevant in what's going on in anime now, Ruchka Kuchiki from Bleach. Now, just like Black Clover, I started watching Bleach, the original Bleach. I haven't finished it yet. So a lot of this is more speculation and what I've seen, which is based off of what I've decided to go with for her Pokemon and her deck. But here's what I went with. I know her whole battle style and everything is based off of ice, and I noticed in a lot of scenes she wears kimonos, which I felt that is very fitting for Frostlass, especially the whole ghost typing on it as well, working perfectly for the Soul Society as a whole and the whole ghost hunting sort of aspect of the show. And I couldn't think of another ice deck to give her besides the ice barriers. I don't know if there is another ice deck. That's what I went with there. Can't believe it took 5 episodes to do this, but up next we have Ochako Uraraka from My Hero Academia. I realized that I've done this for Froppy because I really like Froppy as a character, but I never did it for Uravity yet. So I feel like now's good a time as any because I'm focusing on the women in this episode. So here's what I did. For her Pokemon, probably obvious, Jigglypuff floats, Jigglypuff as well as Clefairy since they evolve with Moonstones. There's speculation about them being from space. Uravity is based off of space and gravity and stuff, so I decided that worked very well. And a space deck besides the aliens, I decided to go with the Neospatians. I don't know if it actually makes sense. You definitely had to retcon how she has it when Jaden has it and how they explained it in the show, but this is all made up anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Next is the woman on the thumbnail, Your Forger. One of the very first episodes, I included Anya in it. In the next one, I had Lloyd, so I figured I'd round out the trio and include Yor. And this one I had a lot of fun with. And if you haven't seen Spy Family, minor spoilers, she's an assassin in the show, so I was trying to figure out how I would incorporate that into a Pokemon as well as a deck, but here's what I went with. I decided to play heavily into the rose motif that she has, because her former name Briar is also based off of flowers and roses, so I figured that works well. What better Pokemon has giant size for hands that also plays into flowers? Lurantis, of course. I may be cheating on that because I noticed a picture including Lurantis with the rest of the group online already, but the Black Rose deck is just a perfect fit, and especially with Yor's character, especially paralleling it to the original owner of the deck, Akiza, I think it just works perfectly well. We're ending this episode with Yui Hirasawa. I was really scraping the bottom of the barrel for a lot of these. I definitely picked some obscure characters that I'm not even sure if anybody knows. Yui is from K-On! I was initially gonna pick Bochi, but since Bochi the Rock is still relatively recent, I decided not to. So I decided to go with the other group about girls playing music. And here is what I went with Yui. For the Pokemon, I decided to play into the sweets of the club and go with Slurpuff. It just makes perfect sense. Slurpuff looks kind of dopey like Yui is a lot. And full transparency, I thought that the Punk deck from Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually had something to do with music. Turns out it doesn't, but it still has Japanese inspiration, so I guess it kind of fits. I thought that the Punk deck had music involved with it. I guess at that point you could just give her a music deck and it would work just fine, but either way, I still think it kind of fits. It's definitely more unique than Yui just having a Toxtricity just because she plays a guitar. But those are the 10 characters, and that is the end of this episode of Anime Crossover. If you enjoyed, hit that like button down below, subscribe if you haven't. If you have any other characters you want to see included in this, leave them down in the comment section. I recorded this episode and the previous episode before I've seen any comments, so if there are any characters that have been mentioned, I'll get to them later. I just wanted to record 2 of these back to back so I have some, but I'll see you next time. Momentai.